Hello there everyone, yo soy Alonso y están escuchando el podcast del Salón de Idiomas. Hola, ¿qué tal están? Bienvenidos a un nuevo episodio del podcast del Salón de Idiomas. Y bueno, aquí conmigo está Rox de nuevo, como siempre, básicamente.
Como siempre, ya es algo común. Hi guys, how are you?
Yeah. Okay, so today I just want to talk about something since we just had an unfinished business, didn't we?
Yes, we did. Yeah.
So today we're going to talk about the listening part of the Trinity ISE III.
Yeah, that's right. I remember we were talking about, we spoke about the speaking, okay? However, I believe it was like in general, right? We were talking about the speaking ISE, but indeed we focus a lot as well on the level 3, okay? So on C level. However, I believe whatever we say here, it's perfect for all the levels, you know?
Yeah, right. They pretty much recycled the structure of the test, just that it's more challenging.
Yeah.
So I actually thought that it would be convenient to talk about it in the previous episode. However, well, I guess that there's more into that we could just mull over to. Since it's just that like this part is also done immediately right after the speaking part. One thing that I have understood among my experience is that usually the main aspect about this is that you gotta talk about negative and positive aspects about a certain topic, don't you?
Mostly. However, it's not just about that. So you have like two kind of outlooks when it comes to the way the exam is posed, if you like. Okay, so on the one hand, you have you can be given like an audio, or you can be assigned to listen to an audio which deals about the pros and cons of a specific topic, which is actually to my mind like the easiest kind of listening. Because in the end, it's better you have this structure, you know.
Yeah, right.
So you by having these standards in mind, you know, okay, I have to talk about these two pros, and I could mention these two cons. However, there's also this kind of different listening, which might be a bit more challenging to my mind, which is like talking about a different topic, whatever, and you needing to mention certain features or aspects which had been tackled in that audio. And this might be a bit trickier.
Okay, so that revolves around the topics that you're gonna talk about. Now, let's just rewind a little since we haven't actually mentioned like the part of like how long does it take to do this part, or like what are the instructions here? Can you enlighten us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, of course. So the first time you're gonna be, well, it's actually pretty easy because in the exam, the examiner is just gonna play the play button, you know, and the instructions are gonna be given by the one who's actually speaking, you know, it's recorded. And the first time they're gonna tell you that you're gonna listen to an audio, and once you finish the first part, like the first listening you've done, you will have to say in like a really short sentence what that audio was about. Okay, and it might seem pretty easy, however, it's not a piece of cake. And I'm telling you that because there are so many students, we just tend to linger and give detail just because they, I don't know, perhaps they're proud they've listened, they understood many things, or perhaps because they are a bit afraid of missing out on things. And sometimes, more often than not, we have to stop them. It's like, okay, no, remember, you just have to speak for like really short. It's just the theme. Just say the theme, the main idea. And that's what I recommend. For example, you can say something like, so the speaker was talking about the pros and cons of changing the time clock twice a year, or the time, twice a year. And that's it. Don't get into details because you're gonna cross over the second part, which is actually you're required to listen a second time to the audio, and then you're given some instructions like tell me the pros and cons. So what are the pros and cons? The speaker has been talking about, and tell us whether he or she has reached a conclusion. Okay, or you can be asked about like what aspects or what features make, I don't know, cockroaches resistant to a nuclear war, so that
Nice.
might be a different thing. Yeah.
Yeah, well, let's not forget that you also have the other way around, which is that sometimes a student just say like one word or perhaps like a phrase, and that's they believe that that's good enough for an answer. For instance, I don't know, like they say something like, well, listening is about food, and it ends up being about how the meat industry is contaminating the planet.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so you have to strike a balance.
Yeah.
Don't speak for either that too long nor too short. You have to strike a balance there.
Yeah. Sometimes I tell them like, yeah, that was not incorrect. It's just that it's as precise as saying that we live in the Milky Way. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, mind you, they really, really pay attention to these, to your performance and the timing. That's like of utmost importance.
Yeah.
Because they are aware that the listenings are not that difficult, and you hear that a couple of times, so you have a pretty good grasp of what that is about. However, you are required to do that like in a short sentence, and the second time you're given a minute to speak about whatever you're required to speak, and there is where you have to pay attention.
Sure. Now, what kind of structures do you have when, for instance, we do this part of like pros and cons?
Yeah, well, it's pretty easy. The first thing is not to repeat what you've said in the previous part. So if in the previous part you said what the audio was about, don't say that again in the second part when you're required to talk about the pros and the cons, for instance, because you're going to lose time and you're given a minute. And do pay attention. Don't speak longer than a minute. Don't show off that you know more than that you know so many things because you've understood everything. Don't show off. Just stick to the minute, because otherwise the chances are pretty high that you might fail the exam. And so, sorry, going back to business. The first thing is not to repeat the same information. It's like when it comes to the pros and cons, don't say, okay, so the audio was about the pros and cons of the meat industry. Don't say that, because we already know that's the pros and cons. Just go. Try to have a set structure and a formula. We always go with the formulas and say the first one. I know. So on the one hand, regarding the pros, we have this, and that. And conversely, moving on to the cons, we have these other things. Now, if you are to repeat the word pro and the word con throughout the whole minute, make sure that you come up with synonyms and you have, I don't know, silver linings, drawbacks, okay? So it shows a bit more of a varied vocabulary in that case. And another important aspect is that you don't need to mention all the pros and all the cons you've heard, but the main ones. However, what they really pay attention here to is your summary skill, so your synthesis skills, sorry. Okay, so don't linger for too long.
Got it. Okay, so one extra thing that I wanted to ask you about this is that most of the time, if not every single time, the speaker of the recording gives like a personal overview. Like, I can to sum up, I believe whatever. And do you believe that that's also worth mentioning while you are like doing the exercise, or should you just stick to what you're being asked?
Yeah, I will just stick to what you're asked. Because sometimes, more often than not, they ask you to say whether the speaker has reached a conclusion or not. And in this case, indeed, you have to say what they believe about the topic they've just talked about, right? But don't stray away from the main ideas, or the main requirements.
Yeah.
You don't have time.
Yeah, certainly. That's one thing that I have seen that they struggle with sometimes. Also, is that the speaker like gives for instance, if he's talking about the pros and cons, the speaker gives the negative aspect, and then they make like just a little comment out of it, which is, I don't know, like just whatever. But the thing is that students tend to misunderstand it, and they consider that this is also worth mentioning. It's like, no, that's not the point. You only have to focus on this little detail that he mentioned, not the extra comment that he said. So it's usually like something that the first thing that you hear, and then when they say something like personally or the way I see it, something like that, it's like, oh, well, you can omit that part.
Yeah, definitely. And that's the difficult part. It's like, which aspects are the ones which I should be mentioning and which are the ones which I could just gloss over. And that's where the student or whatever, if you are preparing the exam, that's where you have to work on. Just pay attention and learn how to summarize and learn how to convey the ideas simply in a logical way without just, like getting into, like beating around the bush for too long. Because otherwise, you will most likely you will fail, and you might have just well understood everything you were talking about, but because you didn't structure that well. To my mind, the most important thing here, learn how to summarize and how to rephrase a bit as well. Don't just use the same words you've heard. In the second time you listen, you can take notes. Of course, take notes like really fast. In the end, it's, you don't have that much time to think. However, when it comes to like delivering your answer, make sure that you also have a bit like the ability of reformulating a bit what you've just heard, right?
Yeah. So, to sum up, you just like try to like stick to your time, make sure that you understand how to like prioritize the information.
Yeah.
And lastly, well, another thing is that unfortunately, I guess that the answer is something not as appealing as everybody would like. What are the topics here that they tend to talk about here?
Well, yeah, I wish I knew.
Yeah, exactly.
I wish I knew. Well, we've come across like plenty of day-to-day topics you might encounter. Things you encounter on a daily basis. Because usually I think we've mentioned this like many times already in our podcast. What we have like this really nice rapport with our students, and whenever they go and do the exam, we ask them, it's like, hey, what was the theme, or what was the topic you encountered and stuff. So they tell us. And topics, like general topics we came across, well, mostly things we can like interesting things you can even find in a newspaper, like reading the newspaper or the news, right? So for example, I remember one was the pros and cons of sharing a house with an elderly. It's like there are elderly out there who share their houses, and that way it's better for them. They socialize more, and for the students, it's as well silver lining because they don't have that many expenses, and it's a cheap, it's a cheap
cheaper option.
Option, yeah, that's it. Or I don't know, day-to-day things. So what I told you, the cockroaches. Why are they so tough? Why are cockroaches like that? And I don't know, like interesting things, or the fish farming, or they are not that mind-boggling, but they are interesting topics.
I'm sorry, listeners, as you can just listen to this. The topics can be pretty much whatever crosses your mind.
Whatever crosses your mind.
They are definitely quite interesting. However, don't worry about it. It's not gonna be rocket science most of the time.
Yeah, but however, just because they're so interesting, and these are like really interesting pieces of information, and they really grab your attention, catch your attention, and I think that's pretty cool because it's easier for you to recall everything or most of the things.
Definitely, yeah.
But if they were to talk about something which is like extremely tiresome and boring, and if they had like a really, I don't know, boring pace of speaking, you may just as well forget most of the things because it's not that catchy. However, these topics are really catchy, and most of the things I was told by my students were like really interesting things, and that's how we eventually later try to like record some similar topics to them, and them getting used to these kind of different themes, if you like. So
yeah, that's pretty much it. I guess that this is not is, yeah, definitely you're going to listen. However, I guess the biggest challenge here is not understanding, it's just being able to rephrase what you are told.
Yeah, because it's not that much of a problem to understand. Thankfully, that's pretty cool. You can understand most of the information. However, is the way you convey, the way you reformulate, and the way you summarize. And summarizing has proven to be quite a difficult task for many people.
Yeah. To my mind, I guess that also the part of the listening test is the conversation per se that you're gonna have with the examiner. That's why perhaps the listening part is so short. It's like just 5 minutes of recording.
Yeah, cut to the chase.
Yeah.
And that's it. Now, mind you, if they cut you off, it's like, okay, that's it. That might mean that you have spoken for too long.
Oh no!
Yeah, that
That
might
must
be.
feel so terrible.
It might be. We have people who come here. It's like, when they start speaking in English, you realize they have such a great level, and they're like, yeah, I have no idea why I failed the listening. I have no idea why I failed that, and most of them were told to stop. That means that you should be trained it should be trained with the correct timing.
Nice.
So that's what we work on as well in Salón de Idiomas. For them to get used to the timing.
Yeah. I guess that those examiners are really into their time. It's like, you're not wasting my time. You're failing the test. If you're extending for a second, I'm gonna end you.
In the end, it's not a difficult topic. So perhaps that's a different thing of them, like not having an excuse, but there's something important not to fail.
Yeah. Okay, so is there anything else that you would like to share? This is actually quite brief.
Yeah, no, I would recommend you guys to go to our YouTube channel. If you're listening to us on YouTube, great. Just look for those specific videos. We have some videos which are just basically audios, okay? And you have some listenings. You can practice some listenings ISE. You can practice and to see a bit how it goes. And of course, all the training we provide our students with is on our online platform, and then you have like a plethora of so many listenings you can just have, and even access the script and see whether you are right or you are mistaken when it comes to like the things you delivered. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, then I guess that'll be it. And I'll just come back in a second to try to summarize everything. I'm just trying to not use the same words, which is going to be quite simple since I'm going to use a different language. So, yeah.
So summarize and reformulate our podcast, and you will have trained yourself for even this specific exam. Yeah.
Sweet. I'll try my best. Okay.
I'll listen to it later then.
Okay. Then
Okay.
see you later, Rox.
See you later. Bye-bye, guys. Bye.
We'll be back in a second.
Hola, ya regresé, ya estamos de vuelta y bueno, como decíamos, teníamos un asunto pendiente o an unfinished business con respecto al episodio anterior de Trinity. Así que hoy hablamos de la parte de listening. Cabe aclarar que, aunque ciertamente nos enfocamos principalmente en la versión C1 de este examen, las recomendaciones que se dan son bastante universales con respecto al ISE II o incluso al ISE I, ya que la estructura no varía. Volviendo al listening, aunque quería abordar este tema brevemente en el episodio anterior, hay más cosas en las cuales podemos meditar un poco más o mull over sobre esta skill. Para empezar, en la mayoría de los casos, la tarea a realizar será hablar sobre aspectos negativos y positivos de un tema en concreto. Sin embargo, a pesar de este formato ser el más común y posiblemente sencillo, también puede que se tenga que hablar de unas características o aspectos que se han abordado o tackled en ese audio, lo cual puede resultar un poquito más difícil o trickier. Con respecto a la metodología, realmente es bastante sencilla, ya que es simplemente el examinador presionando el botón de reproducir y escuchar las instrucciones. El audio se escucha 2 veces. En la primera vez hay que decir en una o 2 oraciones de qué trata el audio. Aunque parezca a piece of cake o pan comido, Rox ha escuchado ya a muchísimos estudiantes que tienden a persistir o linger en dar muchos detalles. Tal vez por el miedo a no decir algo de importancia y muchas veces hay que detener al estudiante y recordarles ser concisos. Pero eso no quiere decir que la respuesta se puede resumir en una palabra o frase. Hay que establecer un equilibrio o strike a balance, como dice Rox. Después se escuchará el audio por una segunda vez y cuando termine se tendrán que decir los pros y contras del tema hablado o los detalles, o cualquier instrucción que previamente se haya dado en un minuto, con la oportunidad de tomar notas mientras escuchamos. Cabe destacar que los examinadores se fijan mucho en cómo hacemos esta parte, ya que ellos están al tanto de que los listening no son difíciles y los escuchamos 2 veces. Algunos consejos que pueden tomar en cuenta es, para empezar, no repetir lo que se dijo en la parte anterior, porque se pierde tiempo del único minuto que se tiene para hacer la segunda parte. Otra cosa, hay que evitar hablar por más de 1 minuto, ya que esto puede suspender el examen. Además, en lugar de empezar diciendo algo como el audio trata de, es mejor utilizar una fórmula que vaya más al grano o cut to the chase como on the one hand, regarding the pros we have y conversely, moving on to the cons we have. Ahora, hay que procurar usar sinónimos de pros y cons como silver linings o drawbacks. También hay que tomar en cuenta que no es necesario hablar de todas las ventajas y desventajas, solo las principales, ya que hay que demostrar nuestra habilidad de sintetizar la información. Vale la pena mencionar también que, aunque en la mayoría de los casos el speaker del audio da su opinión personal del tema al final del audio, es mejor atenerse a solo lo que pide en el ejercicio, ya que hay casos en los que efectivamente se solicita decir lo que el speaker piensa, pero hay que evitar desviarse o stray away del objetivo. También se dificulta la prueba porque muchas veces apenas el speaker termina de explicar un punto, digamos un pro, en muchas ocasiones da una opinión muy breve al respecto. Esta opinión no es información relevante, ya que no es lo que se está pidiendo. Como vemos, hay que practicar, que tenemos que transmitir y que podemos pasar por alto o gloss over de manera lógica y sin irse por las ramas o beat around the bushes, como dice Rox. Porque aunque entendemos a la perfección el audio, si no podemos explicarlo, no podremos pasar el examen. Tenemos que hacer uso de sinónimos, parafrasear y reformular lo que escuchamos. En cuanto a los temas que pueden salir, realmente son muy variados, aunque también podemos decir que los temas pueden ser del día a día. Cosas como por ejemplo puedes encontrar en el periódico. Aunque sean muy diversos, son realmente muy interesantes y tampoco es que sean la cosa más complicada del mundo. No es rocket science, lo cual ayuda a que recordemos con facilidad de lo que se habla. Esta parte del examen es bastante breve. Supongo que como en el speaking es preciso entablar y mantener una conversación con el examinador, aquí ya el asunto es más puntual. Tanto que si te llegan a pedir que pares, es probable que tenga un efecto muy negativo en tu examen. Así que también hay que prepararse para llevar como un cronómetro interno y saber cuándo parar. Y bueno, ya eso sería básicamente todo lo que hablamos en la conversación Rox y yo. Y que sepan que obviamente pueden entrar a nuestro canal de YouTube, así como en nuestra página web, en nuestro Instagram y nuestro Facebook, donde tenemos muchísimo material con el que pueden practicar para esta prueba. Y no solamente el ISE III, sino cualquier otra, o el ISE II, cualquier otra prueba. Así como también pueden venir a la academia y agendar una clase. Y bueno, ya eso sería todo por hoy. Espero que les haya gustado y no olviden que pueden también suscribirse al canal y seguirnos en cualquier red social. Así que los espero para un próximo episodio. Take care. Bye. Esto ha sido una producción del Salón de Idiomas. Se reservan todos los derechos.